sort of my presentation style, but I'm happy to kind of do like a very short one in the beginning. All right. Can you guys all hear me? Okay, cool. I'm just going to shut some other stuff down. Okay, cool. All righty. So thank you all very much for joining. I don't know how you're all doing during this very stressful time, but I think at the end of this deck, the idea is that we all feel like we're going to get through this one way or the other. Pandemics are very peculiar. This will be my first one, I'll be honest. And I'm sure for most of you, it'll be the same thing unless you're touching the age of 100, in which case, good on you. But if you've ever read anything about pandemics, if you've ever read anything about, earth-shattering diseases that have taken the lives and affected societies and hordes, the one thing is that it's like a wild ocean. Once the waves get to a certain point, it's just no controlling it. You just have to hold on tight to something and just hope to God that whatever you're holding on to stays intact while you kind of wait for this to pass. I think the reality of where we are right now is both unusual and not. It's unusual because we're experiencing it in real life for the first time, but it's not because history has documented these kinds of things continuously. Before I kind of get into the the nitty-gritty of the presentation, I think it's really important that we always keep in mind one very critical fact is that this is not the first time this is happening, but I've recently had a number of discussions about this with some people, and I really strongly believe that it's important to keep things in perspective as well. This will be the first time that we're going through something like this where we have the facilities and the capabilities that we do. We are able to communicate at light speed. We have technology that allows us to interact with each other in almost lifelike scenarios. We can pass knowledge and information across borders and countries in the blink of an eye. And this was not possible in any of the previous pandemics. So we have already an advantage. So if you consider that and you consider how quickly we've been able to control this and limit real sort of damage to human lives and other elements, it's far greater than it would have been if we didn't have these facilities. So let's be grateful that this is happening in our time, if it had to happen at all. And so let's get through the deck now. So I think it's important to remember, and I don't know how involved or how closely or distantly you're involved in any of what's happening right now with the coronavirus. मेरे लिए खुद मैं दुबई में होता हूँ. मैं यहाँ पे पिछले I think 8-8.5 साल से यहाँ पे रह रहा हूँ. एंड थोड़ा एक्सपीरियंस के बारे में भी शेयर कर लूंगा. बट ये एक चीज बहुत जरूरी मैंने इस पीरियड के दौरान मैंने जो सीखा है कि it's really important to follow the advice of people who are giving it, especially the professionals, the experts. If WHO is saying, can you hear me? Sorry. Hello? Okay. Especially the WHO. It's very important to consider कि जो वो advice दे रहे हैं on how we should conduct ourselves and how we should manage ourselves. It's really critical. So to get through this, we need to think not just about ourselves, but about those around us. And it's a very critical thing. So moving into the presentation and the basic context of what I'm going to be talking about. And I hope you like the style of the presentation because this is chosen very carefully, taking into account previous occurrences of similar situations. So the first thing you need to have is a crisis mindset. I think that if this ingredient is not something that you can associate with, जो आप feel करते हैं कि you have to really fight hard to understand कि भी crisis होता क्या है और उसके साथ मेरा क्या ताल्लुक है. आप yeah, I'll share some points, but if you can associate with any of these, then I think you are going to be okay, and you probably will surprise yourself. But if you don't, then it's probably good to identify someone who does and cling on to them. Make them your mast on the ship so that you can ride through the storm. Um, it's actually okay to be afraid. It's okay to stress out. It's okay to think about the doomsday scenarios. It's perfectly normal. People do that all the time. As a business, the worst thing that can happen to you is that you have to shut down. Honestly, bankruptcy, fine. Maybe some would argue that's probably the worst thing to happen. But I think that shutting down for somebody who's put their blood, sweat, and tears in building something, having to close it is probably the worst thing. It'll probably affect you in many ways. And that's okay though. I mean, that's not the worst thing. But to be honest, as long as you're on your toes, or आप हमेशा ये सोच रहे हैं कि अगर things get really out of hand and they're beyond my control, it's okay. That keeps you sharp. And मेरे अपने experience में मैं ज़्यादा detail में नहीं जाऊँगा, but मुख्तलिफ scenarios, मुख्तलिफ situations, professionally, personally, जिधर मुझे things were out of my control. And I'll talk a little bit about the internal and the external components, but there were more external components influencing my instability than internal. And I realized that it's a bit like the yin and yang. आपको balance रखना होता है जिंदगी में हर चीज के साथ. And sometimes that balance is not in your control, but it's something you have to counterbalance. So if it's an external factor, you have to find a way to counterbalance it. And usually it's just coming down to the basic instincts of fight or flight. It's about survival. And what do you do to do that? And so the idea is आप अपने दिमाग को, आप अपने होश को हमेशा sharp रखें, because आपका your tolerance for risk will automatically start to develop and grow as a result of that. I know that it's a little bit late to talk about this today since we're like in the thick of this pandemic, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि it's too late to develop or do something about it as well, right? I mean, nobody ever said कि आप idly sit बैठे रहें और फिर बस things will just kind of figure themselves out. It doesn't work like that. You have to be active and you have to do things, and part of that includes keeping your risk appetite at a higher level. Understanding risk also kind of reduces the risk as well. So it's really important to remember that the more you know about the risk that you're in, the better control you can have on it, the less the risk itself is, right? So it's like you don't know what you don't know, but what you do know can actually be the difference between failure and success. And so it's really important to keep in mind that a lot of this stuff is really just a lot of your experiences. It's your belief system, your ethics, your integrity. All of these things are very, very core components of your ability to endure and take risk. But it's also, remember that your ego has no space here, right? I mean, your ego is a very bloated entity that can take up a large part of the room, in the risk room, if you want to call it that. So try and keep your ego outside of that room. But if you absolutely have a hard time, or you don't understand, or you don't think you have an ego, everyone does, even if it's a little bit. We all have some pride, and so it's really hard to separate yourself from it. But if you are very self-aware, this is a very critical part of what you can do to move forward. And so one thing that I usually do, and I'm kind of notorious for this, you imagine or picture doomsday scenarios, right, for your business before they happen, of course, right? Think about the worst case scenarios about everything. I don't know if you've ever heard this expression, ke always prepare for the worst and expect the best. The idea is that you mentally, psychologically, and otherwise, you prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, and then you always know exactly what you need to be away from. ताकि आपको पता है कि आपका red line कहाँ पे है और उससे आप दूर रहें. And you need to always remember that not having to use it doesn't mean that you don't need to do it. That preparation is a very critical part of it. Then it's also important to keep in mind that not everyone and everything can be saved, right? So if you are on a ship, for example, right, and you've got a leaky ship, or I don't know, the waves are getting crazy, आप ये सोचें कि weight drop करने से आप शायद survive कर जाएं. And if you are the most critical component of the ship's survival, or the survival of that experience, then you have to do whatever it takes, right? You have to offload the weight and start to manage, but don't be extreme about it either. It's very critical. It's very critical to keep in mind that understanding the difference between the internal, which is things that you can control, change, and create. These are things that are more in your control than not. But then you have to consider that they have to counterbalance, as I said earlier, जो आपके external elements हैं, जो आप manage कर सकते हैं, लेकिन आप control नहीं कर सकते. Yeah, you're not behind the creation of those things. They could be from other people. It could be from society, environments. I don't know, things that you just don't have any control. अगर आपको सिसिफस के बारे में नहीं पता है, तो I would suggest you go and do some research on him. But focus on what you can control. This is really, really important. आप जरा ज़हन में रखें कि जो आपके कंट्रोल में नहीं है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि आप उसको इग्नोर करें, but आप ये सोचें कि what you can control can be strong enough or powerful enough to counterbalance. So make a list of things that are internal factors and external factors, and try and understand them and be very conscious. And you don't have to kind of kill yourself over it. लेकिन आप ये सोचें कि मेरे कंट्रोल में क्या है और क्या चीजें हैं जो मेरी वजह से ये पेश हो रही हैं, and then what are the things that are not in my control, or but I can do things to manipulate them or manage myself around them. Having this information can often give you a lot more knowledge and power to take the next steps that you need in order to be able to do that. But when you take all of this stuff, into account, it's not just a simple कि भी ये एक 10-step guidebook है, या survival or surviving a pandemic for dummies. Okay, everything is going to follow a menu or a list. It's not like that. It's actually just a strategy, but it is a strategy that needs to evolve as well. It's something that you need to develop, and you need to create a framework around it. It may not have to be a formal framework. It's not like a ship is sinking, but I'm going to sit and make like a list of what I need to do on a whiteboard. ऐसे नहीं चलता है. ये एक instinctual element भी होता है, लेकिन इसमें जो मैं पहले बात कर रहा था कि thinking about or imagining or projecting yourself in the situation of a crisis scenario, you start to prepare yourself. You start to prepare yourself to think about how to deal with a difficult situation, especially when you're in it. Because I don't know if any of you have ever been in any kind of a crisis situation of any kind, whether it's a turbulent flight that could have gone really wrong, or some other life-threatening or really frightening experience. I've been in a few, actually. I've been in a few. I've been in some really, really stressful situations, which I thought I wasn't going to get out of, both personally and professionally. And I'm actually, without exaggeration, I mean, they were life-threatening. But I think the one thing that is really important to remember is that if you're experiencing it alone, then your ability to manage your emotions is going to be the most important thing, because your first instinct is fight or flight. आपका जो पहला instinct है वो यही होएगा कि मैं इस मुश्किल से कैसे गुजरूंगा without having to think too much, because अब ज्यादा सोचने में लग जाएंगे ना, तो फिर you probably won't survive because you'll be overthinking it. जहाज में, if when you listen to the security announcement or the safety announcement rather, कहते हैं जी अगर किसी हंगामी हालात में आप brace position को अख्तियार करें, and that is a tried and tested, probably the best way to save yourself. There's no better way to save yourself in a situation where you need to. And that is, your most natural position, when a human being is being born, that's the most natural position for you to be in that embryonic position. And the idea is that you need to get through that moment in order to figure out what needs to happen next. So you have to develop 3 kinds of goals. You have to have a short-term, medium-term, and long-term goal. It's just like having a business strategy. You have to think about what's the most immediate thing that I need to do to get through this, and make your list really short. I mean, it should be like, your top 3 things at best. Best is even better than that, is just to have one thing that you absolutely need to survive, right? As a business, the most important thing that allows you to move to the next stage is what you need to think about, and maybe a couple of things that support those things, but don't go beyond that, right? Like, don't get greedy. If you have to run from the country that you're in because the authorities are coming after you, I mean, I'm not giving this advice, but let's just say we've all seen those Born Identity movies, so we all know that concept of a burn bag. The idea is कि अगर आपको भागना पड़े कहीं जल्दी से, तो फिर आप अपने साथ क्या रखेंगे? That, or what will be your immediate sort of list of things to take before it's too late for you to leave? So that's your first short term, right? And then your medium term, of course, is like ab agle छोटे से period को कैसे गुजरेंगे, right? Like that 30% period. How will you pass through that? And then, of course, the long term is now that you've understood the nature of the damage, the extent of the damage, how are you going to manage through that? So it's really important to keep in mind that as a business, it's really easy to kind of stick to your guns and say, nahi, zid se hum apni company ke principles and practices ko वैसे ही रखेंगे. But that's actually not true. And if you have that kind of a mindset that you're not going to make it past the long-term period. And I think one of the key reasons for that is because you need to be agile. Most of you are probably tech founders, and you're probably dealing with agile development or some sort of production process that requires you to think, in an iterative model, think short term. इसको मैं change करूँगा तो उससे क्या effect होएगा, and how quickly can I roll back and things like that. So a lot of this thinking is kind of very interconnected as well. आप ज़रूर ध्यान में रखें कि at the end of it all, जब आप short term से भी गुजर गए हैं, medium term से भी गुजर गए हैं, अब आपको ये सोचना है कि यार अगले साल 2 साल मैंने survive करना है. Dynamics change okay hain abhi. We don't know what normal is going to look like after this, by the way. Nobody knows that, right? We can guess, we can have tons of conjecture, speculation bahut karenge. Of course aapne sare padhe hoenge when New World Order ke bare mein jo expect kar rahe hain. Every country will deal with this differently, just as they are dealing with this differently now. And depending on where you are and what you do, this will affect you as well. So read what's happening. Don't get caught up in the hype of the hysteria, but read about what other people are doing. Look at what other startups and businesses in your space are trying to do to pivot if they need to, or reinvent themselves, or maybe do something that they've always wanted to do but never saw the opportunity to do. But ho sakta hai ki this is that window that you've all been waiting for. In chaos, there are opportunities, and this is that perfect scenario you will hopefully never ever have to go through again. But you can really do one of two things. You can either sit and sulk about it, or you can get up and do something really fantastic and transform the way that you operate. Seize the day, take advantage of the situation. It doesn't mean that you're disrespecting anyone, or you're neglecting the hard work that frontline workers are doing to safeguard. But you have to move on, right? The only way to get through this is to get through it. And so do whatever you need to do. And think about, what are those essential things that you would absolutely take and or conserve. And if you have to do that right now, if you're currently in this situation where you're really having to think that paise khatam ho rahe hain, investors nahi mil rahe hain, tankhaahein nahi de sakta hu, rent aa raha hai, ye aa raha hai, wo aa raha hai. Those are very specific things, and if you want, we can discuss them, in the session as well. And I'm happy to troubleshoot it with you, because like you, I'm also experiencing various levels of difficulty as well. But I can share with you some of the things that I'm doing or I will be doing. But it's important to keep in mind that everything is on the table. ये कोई चीज नहीं है यहाँ पे जो बिल्कुल set in stone है और कोई चीज change नहीं हो सकती है. So depending on what kind of a business you are, and I mean, of course, you could also be a hybrid. Maybe there's a third category that I didn't factor, but I think the general rules really kind of apply across the board. Products, you're going to have a tougher time, because I mean, depending on what you're selling, depending on what it is it subscription based? It's a blurry line between product and service sometimes in the digital space. So I think, sometimes you can have a productized service. I'll talk a little bit about one that I'm launching very soon as well. But don't get caught up in the semantics. I think the idea is that you really have to think about how you can get yourself online. If you're not actively or directly selling or providing whatever it is that you provide to people to enable your business, agar aap isko online nahi la sakte hain, to phir aapko, you'll have to really start to think about agility, because aapke piche bhi production ek hai, koi dependencies hain, and aage bhi hoega. You're a cog in a wheel then, right? So aapko ye bada sochna padega. Service ka ye hai ki, I mean, I run both a product company and a startup and a services company, and I can see the difference constantly. And जो मुझे experience आता है कि, I mean, fundamental difference बहुत है. Difference services में ये है कि अब me and my co-founder in my service business, Digital Street, उसमें हम हमेशा सोचते हैं कि अगर खुदा ना खास्ता worst case scenario हमें सबको छोड़ना पड़े, and we work hard to find the people that work with us. I kid you not. I mean, कुछ लोग जो है ना बड़े fleeting decisions लेते हैं, हम तो महीने लेते हैं अपने recruitment process में, because हम जब किसी को लाते हैं, तो बड़ा सोच समझ के लाते हैं. हमारे लिए कल्चर कंपनी का बहुत बहुत क्रिटिकल है. उसके बारे में भी I'll touch on that as well. But it's really important to remember that if in the worst case scenario, and that is a reality, if you have to offload your cost of running, but you need to keep afloat because the company's survival suddenly becomes the most important thing. And that even might include you. Maybe you're the one who needs to step aside, right? Because you're not bringing in the value that you need to, but other people in your team are. These are very important decisions. आपको ये सोचना पड़ेगा. लेकिन let's say hypothetically आपको, and only you and any of your founders need to stay on board and not take a salary for a while or whatever it is. I'm sure खाना पीना तो sort out हो ही जाएगा. We'll talk about the 3 wild cards as well that can help you, stay fed. Maggie noodles वगैरह खा के. It won't be the first time. 80% of your business should be manageable by you. As a services business, the skill sets that you need to be able to deliver what you provide your people, your customers, you should be able to do it yourself. Okay. Otherwise, that's a good indicator, by the way, in general, for me, is if you spread yourself too thin as a business, you've now taken on too many responsibilities, and आप बहुत ज़्यादा चीज़ें offer कर रहे हैं जो आप sustain नहीं कर पा सकते हैं. That's a good measure. कि अगर आप 80% अपने business की offering खुद manage नहीं कर सकते हैं किसी degree तक, of course, excellence and service quality पे impact आएगा ज़रूर. जरूरी नहीं है कि अगर आपको programming आती है और आप developer, आप एक heavy, very experienced developer के बराबर हो. But it does mean that if you have basic knowledge, then you can do the basic level of work. So then you have to trim down कि आप क्या offer कर सकते हैं ताकि आप वो core एक service आप intact रख सकते हैं. 80% of what you do as a business, you should be able to manage yourself. I guess to some degree product पे भी ये apply करता है, लेकिन I guess इसमें बहुत variance है, and I don't know everything, of course, so maybe I'm missing something here. But services के साथ ये है कि आपको basically you have to, like the life raft example, just आप offload करें जितना कर सकते हैं, and आप basically doggy paddle करें. Doggy paddling is, if you don't know, it's one of the easiest ways of swimming. Basically, आप अपने पाँव और हाथ को बस फेंटे पानी के अंदर. It's like making an omelette, and you'll manage. But don't forget your life jacket. Okay, in the previous slide we talked about your life jacket, your short term, your most urgent need. That should be in your pocket all the time. आप उसके बारे में हमेशा ख्याल रखें. And then think about ultimately आपको ये exercise करना होगा कि based on the type of business that you are, and you have to form a distinction, or if you can't form a distinction, if it's hard, if you are a productized service or a service-sized product, I don't know, I've never heard of that before, but if you're some kind of a hybrid, then you have to lean on a side that helps you survive, whatever it is. It's not about picking sides because that's what you like. It's about picking sides because that's the winning side. And that this is the space that you really need to kind of focus on. I think the irony of a crisis is best described in this scenario, जो मैंने खुद experience किया था, not too long ago actually, कुछ साल पहले. I think दो ढाई साल पहले. मैं जब when I was planning my shift corporate career से to my entrepreneurial life, मैं गाड़ी चला रहा था और रेडियो पे एक इश्तिहार आया था ऑनलाइन ट्रेडिंग एकेडमी कि जी आए एक क्लास में enroll करें and learn how to trade stocks, do it yourself, earn your second income. And ये बड़े आते हैं, लंदन से भी कॉल आ गए, उठ पड़ांग लोग आपको कह रहे हैं जी आपको ट्रेडिंग करना है खुद से. Maybe you do trading, maybe you guys know something about this, and if you do, please let me know because I might need your help. But I was curious, and my wife and I, we have an open mind about what we need to do to grow our business and our lives and everything. She's my co-founder, by the way, in Digital Street. And तो मैं घर आया, मैंने उससे कहा, I heard this program बड़ा अच्छा था, and if we go and enroll with 50%, buy one get one free type deal, आप 2 दिन weekend के गुजारे वहाँ पे class के अंदर locked in and 9 to 5, and they'll teach you the fundamentals of trading, and then basically the idea is कि अगर आपको पसंद आए तो फिर आप उनके program के अंदर enroll करें, like it's a proper school, and it's actually quite expensive as well. वो भी एक अलग एक hook था उनका, लेकिन those 2 days were probably the most transformative 2 days of my life at my career at that point. I had worked about 15 years at that point. तो हम गए दो students की तरह सफेद बाल लेके, and मेरे तरह बड़े लोग थे वहाँ पे, मेरे से बड़े भी थे, मेरे से छोटे भी थे. And it was very interesting because we spent these 2 days in this classroom, and we had all these very interesting people come and talk to us. And अगर आपने कभी किसी एक अच्छे से motivational speaker को बोलते हुए देखा हो, उमेर जलियावाला, for example, Pakistan, he's very popular, very well known. I have a lot of respect for him. He He was part of the moderation team for Uber Pitch, which we participated in as Funa a few years ago. अगर आपको याद हो, अगर आप जानते भी हैं. And he's contagious. That guy is really like, he's got this energy about him जो आपको basically सोते सोते जो ना जगा के भी नचा देता है. It's really interesting. And so this is the kind of character, these are the kind of people that were teaching this course. वो हमें बता रहे थे कि जी trade वो कुछ नहीं याद है मुझे. एक सिर्फ सबक याद है उस पूरे 2 दिन के पीरियड में से, सिर्फ एक चीज याद है उसने जो कहा था, and that basically will sum up this slide. ट्रेडिंग में बेसिकली वो आप देखते होंगे ग्राफ्स ऊपर नीचे जा रहे होते हैं, स्टॉक मार्केट्स, and I don't know a lot about it. I know enough about it. I'm not completely daft, लेकिन ये कि मैं एक्सपर्ट नहीं कह सकता आपको किसी भी डिग्री से. मैं समझता हूँ एक conceptual level पे अंडरस्टैंडिंग. उसने कहा है कि बेसिकली जब आपको एक अच्छे ट्रेड के बारे में पता लग जाता है ना, इट्स ऑलरेडी टू लेट टू मेक दैट ट्रेड. मतलब कि अगर आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करने का सोच रहे हैं और आप देख रहे हैं इन्वेस्टमेंट्स अच्छे कौन से हैं, और आप ये इन्वेस्टमेंट्स देख रहे हैं जो राइज कर रहे हैं कि आप जल्दी से उसको खरीदें बिफोर इट गोज टू हाई. I mean, isn't that counterintuitive because you're buying something as it's becoming more expensive? Isn't that the opposite of a good deal? Isn't a good deal when it's getting cheaper? There's an expression, when the market is down, the rich go shopping. मतलब ये है कि जिसके पास disposable income है वो wait करते हैं कि market crash होए तो फिर वो जाके अच्छी चीजों को सस्ते पे खरीदें. And that's the same idea with the trade, the stock market, is that by the time you found out, it's already too late to make that trade, to buy that trade. And the reason is because aap mass populace mein aate hain. Basically, you're part of what's called herd mentality. And whether you like it or not, if you're not part of the trading community that's basically at the pulse of it, कि भाई एक millisecond के अंदर वो trade का फर्क आया तो आपको पता है, then it's already too late because you have information that's way too delayed. And the reason why it's going up is because, like you, millions of other people are also seeing that and wanting to put money in. And the reason that it's going up is because they're all putting money in, and that investing is making it more expensive because demand is increasing. It's basic economics, supply and demand. So the basic idea is that if you can see a crisis coming, you're either behind it. It's a very slow kind of a crisis, like Purane Zamane ki crisis that just takes a long time to kind of hit, but you can see it coming. Financial crisis hota hai, housing market crash in 2008 mein hua tha. I don't know if you know much about it. It took a long time to get to that point because the people who caused that, they made sure that they didn't, or they tried to make sure that they didn't get caught, right? And in their effort not to get caught, they actually started the process of that crisis by giving birth to that crisis in the first place. And so they caused it. It was slow. And by the time most of the people found out, it was already here. And so this statement basically implies that these are 3 states of a crisis, and it depends on where you are based on your relationship with the crisis. So it's really important to kind of be aware that sometimes these things are not your fault, but you know what, you can get through it. What do you need? What are the tools? I think that for any, and these, by the way, I think I could be giving this presentation to people on a normal day. It doesn't have to be pandemic specific. I would have used more positive and like really colorful slide colors, but these things are going to be the most important things that you can ever do for your business in general, because the reason why you do them is because these are the things that create the infrastructure जो आपको survive करने देंगे, right? पहली चीज ये है कि आप अपना एक अच्छा लीगल और फाइनेंशियल प्रैक्टिस रखें. अब कुछ कह रहे होंगे यार वकील को कौन हायर करे, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स बड़े महंगे होते हैं, कोई यहाँ पे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स को ऑनर भी नहीं करता है. There are 2 things about this. I agree, it's a very frustrating and very costly venture. जरूरी नहीं है कि आप costly और time consuming process को follow करें, right? I mean, you can do shortcuts as well. There are cheaper and more cost-effective ways of doing this. Maybe you have a friend who's a lawyer. Maybe you can find some templates that you can get somebody to customize for you. Whatever it is that you do, you need to keep in mind that having your legal and your financial practice at least thought about. You don't have to have an in-house lawyer. You don't have to have a company secretary. ये तो दूर की बात है. हम तो at a startup level आप तो basic law के बारे में भी कुछ जाने तो बड़ी बात है. आप अपने basic चीजों को संभाल के रखें, especially your payments. अगर आप depend करते हैं income के लिए, subscription business है या किसी client से आपको monthly billing आनी है या project basis पे income आना है, तो आप अपने cash flow को protect करें जितना आप protect कर सकते हैं, right? आप minimize exposure to your cash flow. Try to always have money in your bank. It's a really tough thing to do. minimize your cost of running so that you always have a little bit of cash in your thing taken. And this 80-20 rule is something that I'll always refer to in some context or the other. So again, you can say that, 20% of your total operating cost should be money that you have in your bank account all the time. Because worst case scenario, आप कम से कम 20% तो आप अपना cover कर सकते हैं ना, better than zero. And but your contracts are really important because they help you think about how to structure things, right? It's not कि आप उठ के आपको court जाना पड़ेगा, वो एक लंबा एक धंधा है, and that might be a costly venture, but prevention is definitely better than remedy, right? अगर आप सोचें medical industry में, especially now pandemic is दौरान, a lot of people are saying कि अगर हम इसको anticipate कर सकते तो फिर we could have controlled this. Healthcare is one of the most politicized and the most controversial sectors, especially in providing healthcare from the government. या आप US के अगर कभी सुन रहे हैं, Obama care and things like that. Healthcare के साथ ये है कि it costs less if you provide people with the cover to be able to manage their healthcare needs than to pay for the cost of helping them get through it if they're already sick, right? Providing medication, surgeries, things like that become more expensive because short notice where you need highly skilled knowledge to be able to get people through this and help them survive, right? So that end up costing more. It's like that in anything. But healthcare काफी inflate किया गया है. Personally, I don't know why pharma is so expensive, but buying medicine shouldn't be so expensive. But anyway, that's a different thing. But your legal frameworks are really important. At best, कम से कम अपने जो contracts हैं, उन पे एक अच्छा सा एक terms and conditions एक set करें. And you can develop yours over years. I've perfected mine over 5 years. And बड़े companies के अंदर we get into business with companies like Unilever, Dubai Chamber, and entities that are 20, 30, 50,000 times bigger than I am. But we'll get into a discussion about our terms and conditions, and I will not back down unless it's absolutely necessary, because it means I will lose that contract, but I have to consider what's the cost of winning or losing that contract as well. So legal framing बहुत अच्छा होता है because आपको एक किस्म की confidence भी देता है ताकि आप मजबूत तरीके से अपने पाँव पे खड़े रहें. Try and think about legal protections. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't have to learn legal terminology, but you have to understand the context of these things and the concept of behind these terms and conditions that help protect you to keep you moving forward. छोटी चीजें, for example, Dubai में हमारे एक recovery lawyer. Sometimes होता है clients don't pay you, and ठीक है, fine, you forgive that for a while, but you need to get the money eventually because of course you worked for it. तो कुछ ऐसे scenarios हुए हैं जहाँ हमें clients को legally notice देना पड़ा है. And उसके लिए you hire specialists, and most specialists are pretty good like this because वो फिर क्या करते हैं, collection agents होते हैं, they're lawyers, and they will take a percentage of whatever you're owed. So let's say अगर आपको लाख रुपए किसी से collect करना है, तो वो 10-15-20% उसमें से ले लेंगे as their fee, but only when you get the money. So you don't have to pay anything upfront. That's a good thing for you, right? हमारे यहाँ पे उन्होंने advise किया था कि because I'm not a native artist, I don't speak Arabic. I थोड़ा बहुत समझ लेता हूँ, scripture समझ लेता हूँ, but ये है कि यहाँ पे the law is predominantly Arabic, and in order to fight a case, you have to have a licensed lawyer that's typically somebody who's from the local community, and वो बड़ा महंगा हो जाता है, and it's also in a language that I don't understand, so I don't know what's being said really, right? So I have no control over that situation. So she said, you should always put that your contracts are bound by DIFC courts, Dubai International Finance Center, which is one area in Dubai, and basically it caters to largely English population. I can go there without a lawyer and fight my own case for a very small fee, and that's it, unless I'm signing a client's contract. So these are little hacks, right? I mean, I'm obviously Pakistan में कुछ और context here for people who are dialing in from Pakistan. लेकिन इस तरह की छोटी-मोटी चीजें जो ना आप basically layman level पे भी समझ सकते हैं ना, तो it can actually go a long way for you as well. So just having that understanding. Financial practice is very important. It might be boring for people who don't know it, especially if you're very creative or you're very technical. But I can't stress on how important it is to have good financial planning. I have a friend, I have somebody who spends a lot of time, dealing with financial modeling or finance and accounts or whatever aspect of finance anybody's involved in. Just try and get something going. I mean, financial, आप एक basic एक budget sheet भी रख लें, something simple, but just understand कि आप अंदर क्या ला रहे हैं and what's going out from your business, ताकि आपके पास वो visibility हो, because having that visibility gives you control. एक तरह से वो levers बन जाते हैं आपके लिए, so आप उसको adjust कर सकते हैं so that you have the ability to make you have the ability to be more decisive basically, and आप अपने loss और leakage को control कर सकते हैं. मतलब कि अगर आप एक pandemic से गुजर रहे हैं, आपके financials बहुत यानी कि पागल होने लगे हैं, having this visibility can allow you to, kind of patch the gaps as quickly as possible. And sometimes you just can't make lemonade, right? So you just have to kind of work through that with whatever you have. Figure out financial setup and reevaluate each expense. Always think really carefully about it. I'm doing it right now. I have to. As a founder, I'm responsible for the well-being of, we employ about 15 people in our core team, but we have I think we pay about 20-25 salaries between two country offices, Dubai mein, UAE mein, and Pakistan mein. And मैं महीना शुरू अपने स्ट्रेस के साथ करता हूँ और महीना खत्म स्ट्रेस के साथ करता हूँ कि तनख्वाहें कहाँ से आएंगे, कैसे पे करेंगे. We do it. We somehow manage. We have never ever missed a single salary in 5 years of existence. And this was always my promise to my team कि जो भी कुछ करना पड़ेगा, हम salaries हमेशा आपको देंगे. And mostly on time as well. Maybe कुछ दिन delay हो जाते हैं एक आध दफा, mostly out of our control because of the banking system or something like that. But my promise is my promise. And this is something that ties into culture, which I'll talk about briefly next as well. Your money is your most important thing because it really gives you the power to survive. So think about this. And we can talk about some specifics if you have this, but this is just a very important. Corporate governance. अब ये बहुत एक fancy term है, लेकिन आप ये diagram देखें, इसलिए मैंने कोई language नहीं इस्तेमाल किया. आप corporate governance जाके search करें and try and take context of corporate governance और आप अपने business में apply करें. No matter how small you are, even if you're a single founder company with only you as the entire company, एक aspect corporate governance का बहुत जरूरी है कि आप vision, mission, strategy and goals को balance में लाएं, सामने रखें, and then think about what are the elements that you need to be able to keep this thing intact. ठीक है, आपका एक board होएगा, I'm sure, अगर आप, especially if you've raised investment, you'll have a board, you'll have people who help you make decisions that may involve themselves on a monthly basis or less frequently than that, or maybe even more frequently. You have that system because it becomes part of your support system. आपके legal and regulatory system जैसे मैंने बात की थी, basic level पे भी, again don't get caught up in the fanciness. ये बहुत एक आप कहते हैं enterprise level पे ये लोग इस तरह की चीजें बात करते हैं, company secretaries हो गए, board discussions हो रहे हैं, वो बड़े वो mahogany tables पे लोग बैठे होते हैं. It's not like that. Corporate governance sounds like a very daunting and an ominous term, but it's actually really important for anyone to have a grip on the concept of it. It's really important. मैंने भी यही इसी तरह से सीखा था. I was thrown into the deep end in different experiences, and I learned about this. And you always have to have your eye set on your goals as well. So even in a crisis, you have goals. You have to set those goals, short, medium, and long-term goals in terms of what you need to do to survive. And those are your goals. And so some of the goals might shift, but the framework stays the same. So that आपको पता है कि जी आपने इन चीजों को arrange करना है इस तरह से ताकि आपके सबसे जरूरी चीजें आपके सामने हो, and बाकी सारा is on the side. I won't get into the details of this because this bores me and मुझे नींद आने लग जाएगी, but just do some research on it. There is, of course, an invisible ingredient in this whole process, and I think that is the power of team. And survival is actually something that happens in a joint environment. It's not something that you can do alone, and you shouldn't have to do it alone, and you certainly shouldn't do it alone, especially if you have a team. That is the worst thing that you can do for yourself and for your team. If you've worked hard to build a great team, respect the fact that they're there trusting you to lead them. A good leader always makes sure that their team knows what's happening. It's never any different in any scenario. A good leader will always manage their team's expectations. It doesn't mean you have to tell them everything and be completely like, because you don't want to create panic either, right? You have to choose the moments, but you also have to choose the ones that matter the most. If you've ever seen ये movies कभी देखे हो या articles कभी पढ़े हो, I'm sure किसी degree पे you've all come across this at some point, कि लोग सोचते हैं जब crisis होता है तो फिर the first thing that people do is axe the departments that don't matter. बड़े companies में CSR, PR, marketing cut हो जाए, budget ये वो. But the next thing is layoffs. And that is probably, in my opinion, it's funny because I don't have the experience of, like, let's say, the CEO of a multinational corporation. But I can tell you one thing that makes me smarter than them is that I don't think firing a large portion of my staff is the best way to save money. It's not saving money. You're actually trying to stop the hemorrhage. I'm not saying it's not something you need to do. Of course, layoffs can be an essential part of surviving for a business. Sometimes you're just too big. You have hundreds of thousands of employees, and you just need to let go of people, unfortunately, because those jobs they're not bringing in any rationale, and that's not a decision that I would ever like to make. It scares me to think about it. Lekin, layoffs are not equivalent to saving money, right? That's not even a myth. It's a lie completely. Layoffs are basically just a frightened boy reacting in a situation that they don't understand, or even a girl to a situation they don't understand, or they think they understand, but they really don't. What actually makes a difference is if you cut back on expenses, right? You might have heard this, I guess, Pakistan bhi kafi ho raha hoga. You'll hear stories ke layoffs ho rahe hain. 200 log layoff ho rahe hain. Trucking ne bhi kafi logon ko layoff kiya tha, unfortunately. But then you will also probably hear some news stories about companies that are saying, okay, you know what, hum 25% salaries ko cut karenge. Sucks. But the situation is such that 25% salary cut from the employees can actually be money that you either don't need to continue running through months, so it reduces your cost of running, or that can go towards something else that can actually help you generate some more revenue as well. And that whole thing I started with in the beginning is actually what this is all about, is that we're all in this together, so we'll get through it together as long as we stick together. None of this will work if you do things a little bit in isolation and aap kuch cheezein aap group ko involve karen. If you are a founder and you have a team of people and you are thinking about ways to manage yourself and you love the people that work with you, this is really important, and I'll talk about why. Unko shamil karen. Tell them that, look, these are the options. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what we're thinking about as founders. We're thinking about cutting back on salaries. I know that it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your family. It might hurt your ability to survive each month, but it's either that, or then people might lose their jobs, because that money needs to be conserved, because the company needs to survive, and for the majority of people to be able to have some income as well. So it's that old philosophy of greater good. It's a tough philosophy, but it's a necessary one, because for things to move forward, you have to think about what are the most essential things. Going back to your 3 most important things to survive, and how you can use them. So try and avoid layoffs if you can. Try and avoid firing people. But worst of all, don't use this as an excuse to fire people who are just not performing. That's just the worst thing you can do. That's like you're a really mean person if you fire someone in this time, or you put it on non-performance, but you actually know that there's a massive pandemic outside. There were Dubai mein 2-3 log jo main janta hu, zabardast log hain, and they got laid off because of non-performance. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? This is the time you choose to tell me that I'm a bad employee? You could have told me this like 6 months ago, or waited until at least this was over. How am I going to feed my kids? And it's a horrible thing to do. It's a really terrible thing to do. I know I look like I'm laughing. I'm not being insensitive. It just baffles me that the level of ignorance that people might have in positions that influence people's jobs. Don't fire people if they're not performing right now. Hold on to them. They might actually show some other characteristics or attributes that might be refreshing and might be something that you never saw about them before. Maybe they're not good employees. Maybe they're good at something else, and it comes out during this time. People are remarkable creatures. We just have to learn to find the right ways of bringing out the best in them. So list down the values of your team culture, and think about how you can use them as shock absorbers for your business. And then also think about the ones that can actually amplify and magnify the problems as well, so that you understand, it's like pros and cons of your team culture, right? Last year, my company was a finalist for the Gulf SMEs People and Culture Award. We were among, I think, 7 companies out of like hundreds that had applied, who were awarded as finalists. It was an amazing experience. We were invited to this really fancy dinner. And I think that, the companies that were there, I mean, these are like companies that have raised tons of money in funding as well, or they were actually well established as well. And mostly like they were small, medium companies. So some of them were startups. Some of them had been around for a while, but they classified themselves as an SME. But it was quite an honor. And I think that jab hum presentation apna de rahe the to the judges before the event, that allowed us to become the finalists, बड़ा मजा आया था, because हमने टीम को शामिल किया था, videos बनाए थे, we got everyone involved, and we talked openly, because I'm not afraid of putting my cards on the table of the team. हमारा जो company में culture ऐसा है, there's no hierarchy. I'm not the boss. I mean, they might call me that, but the thing is that if I'm doing something and that's wrong, then my team has the right to call me out on it. We constantly remind them of this. Of course, there are decision makers, but we don't have like a boss or reporting relationship. We call it mentors, mentees, right? So somebody's on my team, I'm their mentor. I'm not their direct line manager. because it creates a different kind of a culture, right? People feel like there's more empowerment, there's more autonomy, and they are respected. So this is important. So think about how you're building your team culture, and if you're in a situation now during this pandemic where you can actually engage people. I'll take a pause here for a second because I've been going on for a while. मैं थोड़ा एक पानी का sip लूंगा. But is there any questions that anybody has at this point? Anyone who wants to kind of raise their hand or anything? Sana, I don't know. Let's see. Let me see. There's a chat here. Good advice. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Asim. All right, cool. So, sorry, I'm just going to go back. Okay, so managing stakeholders and clients. This is pretty interesting. Stakeholders are anybody who you engage with. It could be your employees, it could be your investors, it could be board members, it could be your customers, your suppliers. कोई भी हो सकता है जो आपके existence को justify or rationalize करता है. Stakeholders की कोई exact shape or form नहीं होता है. Anybody who engages with your has stakes in what you do is basically a stakeholder because they're holding a stake in what you do. And clients, of course, उनको separately call out किया, especially if you're a services business, because client पे dependency होती है. That's why we do what we do, is so that we can serve businesses and people so that वो हमारे expertise को लेके benefit कर सकें. उनसे क्या relationships है आपके? What are they going through? Are they going through a tough time as well? Are they benefiting from this? Are they in the delivery business and delivery is skyrocketed? Are they making tons of cash while everyone else is burning? And how did their crisis management practices affect yours? This is really important. कि आपके पास अगर crisis management खुद नहीं है तो फिर आप किसी और पे कैसे defend कर सकते हैं? But having a crisis management policy before the crisis comes is actually kind of important. That's why it's called crisis management. But do they have something in place, or are they doing something that can help protect you and save you, or safeguard you from challenges, right? You'll be surprised at the kind of things that can come up in these kinds of situations. But the most important thing is that managing relationships means also kind of having very good alerts, early warning systems. अगर आपने कभी सुना, especially weather systems के लिए होता है, they tell you hurricanes कब आ रहे हैं, tornadoes कब आ रहे हैं, tsunamis कब आ रहे हैं. You need to be able to anticipate this stuff, and you need to have systems in place. So you need to have these relationships in place ताकि अगर आप किसी crisis में आ जाएं तो फिर आप उसको manage कर सकें. Now let's say you don't have this stuff and you just didn't understand the importance of it. आपको कभी सोचा भी नहीं पड़ा इससे पहले. You need to start thinking about it now. After this presentation, go and research crisis management for a startup. Okay, think about what are the top things that you need to plan for as a startup. If it's not already something that I've covered in my talk this morning, then think about the things that you need that are relevant to you. Look at what other businesses in your space are doing, and start developing something. Put some standard operating procedures together for your relationships, for your business, so that you are in control of the situation as much as possible. But the most important one, especially with stakeholders and clients, is like start with the toughest relationships. There's a lady in Dubai who I follow on Twitter. I would recommend you do too. She's the author of this book called Hard Talk. Her name is Dawn Metcalf. I think she's Irish. Really cool lady. And she has this this thing called Hard Talk, which is like have the tough conversations. Don't avoid the tough conversations, because having the tough conversations means that it'll give you thicker skin and it'll give you an understanding of how to get through tough situations without being afraid of them. Sometimes the fear of something is so great that you never actually approach it. You just always stay away from it because you're like, nahi, ye mere se bahut badi cheez hai. But it's not true, actually. A side note, once upon a time, I had a very serious problem with somebody who was at the top of a very large organization, an airline. And I was a loyal customer of that airline for a very, very long time. And my friends know the story about me. I spent about a year developing an approach and writing a letter to send to that gentleman who runs that airline. Okay. And I used whatever resources I could. And I spent 1 year and I found that person's. I said I wasn't going to send that anywhere else. I'm going to send it directly to that person because I need this person to see it. But I know that person is a classic person. So I'm going to write it as a letter and attach it as to my email. I'm not going to write a long email. I'm going to actually do a proper letter. The only thing next I could have done was actually send it by post. But I think thoda zyada extreme ho jata. Pen pal. And I wrote this letter and I just sent it to this person and they wrote back. And they took my feedback and they thought that it was so well written that they wanted to share it with their staff. And we had continued this engagement. Of course, it had to end at some point because there was no real purpose beyond like sharing my frustration with the experience that I was having in this airline. But I got to the top person to the person who runs this. And I realized at that moment that when you set your mind to it, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do, especially when it comes to tough relationships. You just have to have those tough conversations, but you have to do it in a way where you maintain your integrity. You know, don't lower yourself. Don't become a person who, you know, starts panicking and gets crazy. Right? Manage yourself, manage your composure, and sound like an adult. Sound like you're mature, even if, you know, you don't have a lot of years behind you. I personally don't think that having experience is the most important thing in this scenario. I think it's about your sense of relationships. And then this is, I think, what I call the wildcard section. You can sometimes get help from the strangest places. You have three resources that are at your disposal at any given time in your life, and you engage them all the time when you're posting stuff on social media, when you're working with them, you know, when you're going out for dinners, whatever it is. You've got your friends, your family, and your team, right? They can help you in situations when you least expect it. You might not need to do it under normal circumstances, but हम normal circumstances में नहीं हैं, हम बहुत unusual and abnormal circumstances में हैं, और हमें नहीं पता कि ये circumstances किस तरह से लगेंगे on the other side. Maybe this is the new normal. I don't know. Maybe social distancing is what we've always needed. You know, I know some people will be very happy because they don't like उनको चप्पी शप्पी लगाने का कुछ शौक नहीं. So know your wild cards. You know, who are the people that you've just never thought about going and asking for a favor from, and it's okay to ask a favor. You know, maybe you have a really rich friend who can bail you out. Maybe you have a family member, you know, an uncle who's got tons of resources, or maybe they have knowledge. Maybe they're a lawyer who can help you write an NDA. They can look over your contract. Exceptional times call for exceptional measures, and usually इस time के दौरान जो ना लोग अपने requirements को जरा chill out कर देते हैं. So इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप नाजायज फायदा उठाएं. मतलब ये कि think about, make a list of your friends, your family, and your team, people who can help you in ways that you might not need. Ask people for help. Don't be afraid to ask. कुछ cultures में, खासकर हमारे में, asking for help can sometimes be something seen as a weakness. I can guarantee you it's not. There are many times that I've asked for help, and it sounds very embarrassing. There was a time in my life when I was in between jobs and मेरे savings भी खत्म हो गए थे. My नई शादी हुई थी, and अब हमारी शादी के 13 साल हो गए हैं, but उस वक्त नई शादी हुई थी. And there was a time I remember when my mother-in-law was bringing our groceries to our house, and I could not survive that. I was like, मेरे तो pride और ego को तो तबाह कर दिया. But I got through it. You know, that's a tough time, but you get through it because family is there for you, and they can really help you. You need to think about what you want to ask them. Don't just throw out 10 things and see who can help you. Structure your thoughts, understand them. What are they good at? What do they do? And try and be very laser focused about the kind of help that you ask for, because then you'll get better quality help as well. So make a list of your wildcards. If you don't have a business at the end of this, then there's no legacy, there's no story to tell. So you need to do whatever you need to do to survive. So think about, you know, are you in a sprint or are you in a marathon, right? Like, how do you need to get through the 100 meters, or what do you need to do to get through the 10 miles, right? If you need to sustain yourself, then think about offloading as much as you can so that you can go the distance. But if something that you need to get just to the next milestone, which is very close by, try and do the fastest thing that you can, right? Agile development, product feature rollouts, whatever it is, scale back. Whatever you need to do, just categorize yourself and then follow the right methods. You know, become the Usain Bolt of sprinting, or I don't know who is a great marathon runner, but become that person. And you know, if you're in a slow or kind of like a pressure cooker type, you know, stressful situation, or a pandemic just mein hum abhi hain, for example, it's kind of unfolding every day. There's like a new crisis that's emerging from this crisis. You're in a long situation, and we're definitely in a marathon situation right now. So you need to think about the long run. You need to think about, this is 2020. You know, a lot of people are talking about this. 2020 के बारे में ये कह रहे हैं कि it's like the year that never was. It's so strange, right? Because it's like the coolest year, 2020. I mean, come on, cricket में भी एक आपका reference बन गया. But this is the year that is going to help shape the next 100 years for humanity, really. I don't know if many of you know this, but SARS was basically the birth of e-commerce. So something else is going to emerge from this. I think that educational technology, or edtech, is going to play a very big role in giving people skills and power to do things remotely or from home. So we've got some NIC Karachi, maybe हमारे बड़े ज़बरदस्त like Hassan, who have really great startups, Sabak and all. In businesses के लिए बहुत enormous opportunity है to be able to give both establish their value to people who were otherwise maybe not paying attention, but also be able to give really good quality product or service experience to people who never knew they needed it before today. And so this is going to be a great time for some businesses. So if you're not in that space, then you need to think about what you need to do to get through the marathon. So pick the race and then figure out what you need to do. You need to win this. You have to have a winning attitude. Good sportsmanship, but to win. Okay, so be like Michael Jordan, be like Mike, but have a good team around you as well. And this is not the first or the last time that we're going to go through this. Hopefully in our lifetime, as I mentioned earlier, लेकिन जरूरी नहीं है कि इससे हम गुजरेंगे नहीं. ये आएगा दोबारा, maybe other shapes and forms. And of course, हमारी जिंदगी में we've seen others similar. We've had financial crises, we've had health crises, you've had like MERS, you've had SARS, bird flu, swine flu, foot and mouth disease, all of this stuff. But I mean, different entities in life are attacked or at risk. But this is the first time that we're facing something that spreads faster than we can control it. And but we need to know the facts. Okay, we made a deck actually about 2 weeks ago. हमने एक presentation बनाया था. I'm happy to share it with you guys if you want, or you can just go to digital.st/COVID-19 COVID 1 word, all uppercase. It's a deck that we made using WHO practice to kind of tell people, look, follow the advice of the WHO. Don't just listen to everything everyone is saying. Do the basic stuff. Do the most important stuff. Don't overcomplicate it, but be careful. And it was our attempt to share some good advice to people. We don't know the first thing about prevention, but we took the best advice of the people who do know that and put it in a nice creative document that hopefully will help people or has helped people. So that brings us to the end of my long and very tiring presentation. I'm sorry if I bored or put you guys to sleep, but hopefully you've learned something today. A little bit about myself. I've got about 17 years of experience. I used to be a corporate entrepreneur. I've worked with companies like Nortel, Acumen. I was part of the starting team for Y-Tribe and Acumen in Pakistan, Redu Group, which owned Y-Tribe at that time. And my last role was with the British Council. कुछ 1.5 साल पहले मैंने corporate career से बिल्कुल full-time shift लिया था. Funa is something I've been working on for a long time. People who know me know how long I've been working on it. I won't tell you guys, otherwise you'll also know my age. But I basically spent about 1.5 years transitioning from corporate life to entrepreneurial life. Lots of responsibilities, and you have to think about like how you're going to manage yourself. You can't just jump ship. You have to really think about this. I took a little bit longer than most people would. Most people, you don't even have the luxury to do that, to be honest. But I thought about it because I thought a 30-day notice from an employer is less job security than maybe getting less money at the end of the day if I'm a founder of a company, but at least I have more control over my destiny. I have 2 startups, Digital Street and Funa, for those of you who know me through that. I'm a certified mentor with Techstars in UAE, Startup Bootcamp. I mentor a lot of startups in different spaces and help them think through different problems and complications. Mentoring is something that I find is the most honest relationship. It's the only one where you can switch sides and there's no ego or pride. You can really balance each other out. There's no obligation. I started Digital Street back in 2015. Basically, Digital Street को शुरू ही किया था Funa को bankroll करने के लिए because it was too early for investment. And तब से हमने basically 2 बंदों से 15 बंदों की company बना ली है. We've won a lot of awards and a lot of accolades, and we've worked with and we still work with some really, really big name and really interesting clients, some really small stuff as well. Companies that you've probably never even heard of. We work with some huge influencers as well. And we're about to launch actually our first productized service. I use that term in the beginning to warm you up. We're launching this thing called website like, Nazar. And the idea was that we have all these web developers, working with us. Why can't we commoditize a very small, but a very lucrative part of their ability, which is managing websites? A lot of people, usually आपको website developer hire करना पड़ता है, agency के पास जाना पड़ता है, freelancer को लेना पड़ता है, बहुत due diligence होता है, time लगता है, खर्चा बड़ा होता है. हमने बड़े एक transparent model के साथ एक package system develop किया that's based on hours and transparent hours. We'll give people audited reports as well कि time हमने कैसे गुजारा है, covering different areas so that people can actually buy. And this is the best time for us to launch this right now, is because A, there's going to be a lot of people building websites. B, there's going to be a lot of people looking at cutting back on costs. And C, this is a great way for us to find a new revenue stream जो हमें शायद fuel कर सके going forward, because हम भी crisis में से गुजर रहे हैं आपकी तरह, and हम भी जरा सोच रहे हैं कि हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा, तनख्वाहें काटनी पड़ेंगी, do we have to let anyone go? I don't think so, and I really hope not. That's not something that I ever want to do. But most importantly, what can we do with what we have right now to make more money rather than having to save money, right? So website is really critical. My team के पीछे लगा रहता हूँ पूरा दिन कि भाई इसको launch करो. And that's it. That's all I have for you. We've got, I think, like maybe 20-30 minutes to spare. So I will shut up now. And अगर कोई questions हैं या कोई comments हैं, please feel free to put them forward.
I think Salman Khwaja has raised his hand. So Hassan, if you can allow him to talk, please.
Open the gates.
It was a pleasure listening to you. I would like to know your contact details. जो आपकी website management है, जो आपकी बाकी चीजें हैं, उसके मेरी एक अपनी एक non-profit organization है, and yes, I have been looking for someone to manage it. Social media उसकी manage करनी है. तो आखिरी चीज जो आपने pitch की है, I'd like to take it forward.
100%. I'm just putting some links into the chat for everyone to be able to access so that you guys have this stuff available. This is not launched yet, website, but we're going to be going live hopefully today. But I'm sharing the URL here anyway. We're losing our other captain actually, Asfar. But anyway, I think my details, I'll leave them on the chat. But I'm really easy to find. I'm pretty much the only Zohare on the internet. If you just type in my name and spell it right, Zohare. But I'm very easy to find. I make sure that people can access me. I'll provide everything. I think Corsana maybe can provide all the details as well.
Sure.
I'm very happy to connect.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions?
Any criticisms? Am I talking nonsense? I'm very happy to have a debate.
I think it was a very, very good presentation, and I think one of the few presentations I sat through.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a compliment.
You were saying that you don't want to tell कब Pune review start हुआ था and White Tribe and all of that, and I was like, okay, I should also keep my mouth shut because I know
you and I go back a long way. Yeah, we go back a long way. Well, I mean, I don't mind. I just became 40 years old in January. It sounds really strange saying it, but definitely 40 is the new 30. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that one thing that I realized about being a founder of my own company, I think I started my life all over again when I finished working for other businesses. It was like new skin, and मैंने काफी realize किया था. And I think NIC Karachi, by the way, ज़्यादा उठाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है तारीफ, but I think it's really important to say this, that NIC was my first entry point into the world of being a true entrepreneur. NIC was also new at the time. So, we were kind of learning the ropes together. I was part of the first batch. मैंने apply किया था तकरीबन कोई हफ्ता 10, I think about maybe a month before I left British Council. And I had a really amazing role. I had a team of 12 people reporting to me. I had 7 countries I was responsible for. Traveling all over the world. I was somewhere or the other every month. I was somewhere like exotic, Dublin or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or whatever, and it was amazing. It was like the dream job. It was the best way to end my corporate career. But I don't think I started to live until I actually started to run my own startup. It was my old startup. It was always on the side, but it's the first time I really gave it the importance that I needed. And NIC really helped me. I used to fly to Dubai mein hi rehta tha, but I used to spend a ton of cash on flights trying to make sure that I attend the important sessions. And Asfar knows this because.
Yeah, it was actually a big surprise for me when I met you at NIC, and I was like, oh, okay, good to see like old faces. So, yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, it's been a good experience. I think so. This community is definitely one that I'm happy to contribute with. It was tough. Asfar ne bada lada tha mere sath. Yeah, tumne presentation karna hai, nahi karna hai. But we got through it. So, do we have any other questions? I have errors connecting. Big hello to Zohare. Can't hear anything. Okay. Asfar, maybe if you stop using those fancy backgrounds, then maybe you can actually have a serious conversation. So
questions from our participants.
We have a very light attendance today, so I think people are probably. I only slept about 4 hours, by the way. So we've just implemented a new practice with my son, and it's a very stressful night. So if I look a little sleepy, it's because
I think we'll just end it here and carry on with your things. Just share your presentation with us on email. So we'll share it with our participants and आपकी contact details वगैरह भी दे देंगे.
ठीक है, perfect. I'll do that. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thank you for your time. ख्याल रखिएगा अपना.